I am so excited about this week's episode of Finally Seen. This week we have Dr. Deb Muth, and she, for over 20 years, has made a daily difference in the lives of her patients. She's treated over 10,000 patients during her career and has a passion for helping others. She owns and founded Serenity Healthcare Center which is the Midwest's largest integrative medical clinic. Her team brings modalities from every aspect of the healthcare space to assist their clients in healing. She holds an MS in herbal medicine and an MS in natural medicine from the University of Australia. As an early adopter of anti-aging and regenerative medicine, she is board certified in anti-aging regenerative medicine, trained by A4M, trained by Dr. Horowitz, and certified by ILAID in tick-borne disease and mold toxicity. Her driving force has always been a deep-seated desire to help people achieve their health goals and live their best lives. She's a recognized expert in integrative medicine, a highly sought-after speaker, and successful entrepreneur. Her contributions extend beyond the medical field, as she is also an author of 2 books, more to come, a prolific writer of published articles, a guest on various TV shows, and the host of the popular podcast, Let's Talk Wellness Now. She also takes pride in her role as a mentor, guiding and inspiring the next generation of healthcare professionals. Please welcome Dr. Deb Muth. Hi, I'm so excited to have you on this week. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Well, I just thought it was so ironic that this podcast is named Finally Seen, and our visibility framework is called Finally Seen. So it's so ironic that your book kind of goes along the same lines of that. But I want to jump into how you even got into medicine, because it's very rare to find a person with so much education behind them who wants to adopt all sorts of, like the integrative parts. I recently went to a doctor myself, and he was very tunneled and wasn't even really going to explore things. That was super frustrating. And he really didn't actually get to know anything about me. He just wanted to stick to his protocol, and that was it. So I want to know, how did you go from being an RN to now such a well-versed and dynamic doctor?
Thank you. So I think it really stems, before I was an RN, I went to school to study psychology and wanted to be in the psychology world, and quickly realized that maybe that wasn't the best fit. That's why I went to nursing school. And I've had the pleasure of working with so many amazing physicians in my lifetime. And as an RN, I worked in a fertility clinic and had the luxury of being exposed to very advanced, unique technologies. And I knew really quickly after I became an RN that if I wanted to continue to have the opportunity to do the things that he allowed me to do as an RN, I'd have to become a nurse practitioner. So I finished nursing school, went right into being a nurse practitioner at that point. And it was shortly after I graduated as a nurse practitioner, maybe about 2-3 years later, that I started having some complications myself. And I remember walking into my primary care doctor's office and saying, I really don't feel well. It was an August day here in the Midwest. It was 90 plus degrees. I had on a long sleeve shirt, a fleece jacket, and I was comfortable outside and inside. But I knew I'd go inside and it was going to be freezing in there. So I just always dressed for that, because my temperature thermometer was always broken and I was always freezing cold. And they never said anything to me about how I was dressed. And the tech came in, took my temperature and said, I think there's something wrong with the thermometer. I'll be right back. We went through this process 3 times. And I finally said to him, what is the thermometer reading? And he's like, well, it's 95.3. And there's no way you could have a temperature like that. And I kind of nodded and said, that's interesting, knowing that I'm dressed like this. And they never put the connection together. I saw the doc, and I knew going into this conversation with him that I was leaving with one of 2 diagnoses. I was either leaving with a diagnosis of fibromyalgia or a diagnosis of MS. I had boiled it all down to that. And he never commented at all about my temperature being low. And I left with a diagnosis of fibromyalgia, a prescription for narcotics, a prescription for antidepressants. And he said, go home and get your affairs in order. You're going to be disabled in 4 years. I was 20 at the time. And I remember walking out to the car, sobbing, calling my husband, just bawling and going, "Oh my God, what are we going to do?" My youngest son was just born. He was only maybe a year old, if that even. I was just really getting my nurse practitioner career off the ground. And luckily at that time, I had my wacky quote unquote friends that did different things. Back in the day, we called them the witchcrafty friends, and now they're very commonplace. And so I called one of my friends and said, "Okay, you guys know somebody that knows something that can help me with this." And luckily, they didn't mind me making fun of them back then. They took me to their friends and they started teaching me about nutrition and lifestyle. And the first thing they said to me was, "You have a thyroid issue." And that was obvious. And so we worked on treating my thyroid. My numbers were not abnormal, just like so many other people. And we worked on treating my thyroid. We cleaned up my diet. We got rid of some fungal overgrowth. And within 3 weeks, almost all of my symptoms were gone.
3 weeks. That is insane. He was giving you a death sentence, and 3 weeks later, all good. Wow.
It was amazing. And you know, at that point, I started going, okay, we're missing the boat on this in traditional medicine. And it became a curiosity for me. So I started learning more. And the more I learned, the more I thought, I need to learn more. And I went to naturopathic school at the time, got my PhD in naturopathic medicine. And shortly after finishing that, I was able to join an amazing practice here with a doctor who was a pioneer. He had been doing integrative medicine since the 70s. It was a very
Wow.
quiet, best kept secret type place. And they took me in and started teaching me about naturopathic medicine, teaching me about some of the alternative things they were doing. I had the pleasure of meeting people that are very big physicians that everybody would know today, big names back in the day when we were all nobodies. And they were awesome. And they taught me so much. And that was kind of the onset of my career. And I just love learning. So I just always kept learning. I'd get a complex patient I didn't know anything about. I'd go dig in and try to find the research. I'd try to find the answers for this person because I knew what it felt like when nobody was willing to do that for me.
Absolutely. And, that speaks to just what makes you different because, I know firsthand that that's not how most physicians treat you. They don't go, "You know what, this is complex. Let's dive into this. Let's see." It's usually, "Oh, it's just anxiety or maybe just an allergy," or, they always toss it to something and here's 5 prescriptions and I'll see you in 3 months. It's like, eh, I know that with my own stuff, that was the first thing they did was toss a bunch of prescriptions at me and including some with, the black label warnings for mental health. And thankfully, I one in particular I was taking and it was helping. Mind you, I did need it initially for that because I was having some severe breathing issues. So I did need it right then. But after I started to notice, this isn't quite sitting well with me. And then I researched the drug even more and I was like, oh, heck no. What do I need to do to get myself off of this one? And so, you know, dealt with my nervous system, all the things you talk about in your book.
Mhm.
Well, not quite all of them. Your book is way more expansive than my current knowledge, but like you, I'm constantly learning. I love learning new things. And I was just telling somebody earlier yesterday that I'm actually glad that I got my health issues, my autoimmune issues, because it's made me more aware of my body. I've researched more. I listen to my body more, and I'm more aware of everything that goes on in and around, my body. And you have one thing that you talk about in your book specifically about EMFs, and I think that's something that a lot of us haven't really acknowledged that the EMFs are everywhere. I mean, they're in all of our offices. Like,
Yeah.
you grow they're in the grocery store everywhere. I mean, even the other day I was on my phone and it wanted to pick up the Wi-Fi from the truck that was right next to me. And I was like, whoa, okay. So, the EMFs are everywhere and people don't really think about even the things we can't see that are bothering us. What was it that kind of got you to start to think about some of those out of the box things, specifically like EMFs and whatnot?
Yeah. Over the years, I've learned a lot about EMF. And my first practice that I was a partner in was an environmental medicine practice. So
Oh,
we treated a lot of environmental illness, a lot of allergies. EMF was just starting to be a thing back then. We had a lot of chemically sensitive patients. So when EMF started to be an issue, we started looking at that. And as time has gone on, we've learned more and more and more about EMF. So that's always been on my radar. Where it really became to be something that I was interested in was when I was diagnosed with MS. And when I was diagnosed with MS, I started thinking outside the box, going, what are all the things that I know can cause or mimic MS? And one of those things was EMF. And so I brought a environmental specialist out to my office. I brought them out to my house and I said, I want you to do a complete biological examination in my house and tell me what am I dealing with that could be contributing to my symptoms that look like MS, because I really don't believe it is. If it is, I'll deal with it. But I think there's things that are making this worse. And there's a very strong connection between EMF sensitivity or EMF exposure and neurological diseases like MS and Parkinson's and ALS. And so when the environmental biologist came out to my house, we found all kinds of things. My office setup had the most EMF, and I sit here all the time. We found VOCs, formaldehyde things. It was a brand new house that we built. So I knew it was off gassing, but I just didn't know to what degree it was off gassing. I knew not to have anything Wi-Fi in my house or in my office. Everything in my office, including my clinic, is hardwired. Unless it absolutely has to be a Bluetooth thing that we don't have any other choice for, everything has been hardwired. But it was interesting to see how much EMF was still being emitted off of those things, even though everything was hardwired. And we know that those things make your neurological symptoms worse. I've always been cognizant, like I'm not buying a house that has a Wi-Fi tower anywhere or a cell tower within a certain radius of things, because all of those things make such a big difference for you when you're sensitive.
yeah, 100%. And that makes a lot of sense. I know that I have family members who will turn off their Wi-Fi at night just to
Mhm.
kind of give their bodies a little bit of a break when possible. And, I know that there are options where you can turn off the 5G on your phone and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's just really fascinating that you were able to be so ahead of the curve on all of that, really before it was even talked about. Did you have a lot of pushback earlier in your career with people thinking you were kooky or things like that?
Oh, yes. Lots of practitioners would look at us and think we were nuts. They didn't understand what we were doing or why we were doing these things. And even still today, some of our colleagues, some of our clients are like, I don't know, you're a little out there for me. But I'll say now that we have some political changes going on and more and more and more of this is being brought into the light, people are starting to open up. They're starting to understand it. And people like myself and other colleagues who've been in this industry for 20 plus years, this is not new to us. This is things that we've known for a very long time. But we're just so grateful that the masses are being educated, because as an individual person, you can only educate so many people at a time. When this information starts getting out and people start questioning our food, our EMF, what our cell phones are doing to our brains, and that we are seeing higher rates of brain cancer than ever before since we had these things in, the earbuds that people are using, our Wi-Fi, those are not any better. This information is going to make us a healthier society. But there are still people that think I'm a little bit of a whack job. They still think she's a little out there for me. But in the same token, in the last, say, 5 to 7 years, we've been having more and more of our traditional physician colleagues referring people to our clinic, because they will say, like, we know something's going on, but I can't help them. Or they'll say, like, I really suspect they have mycotoxin illness or Lyme disease, but I'm not allowed to treat them in our clinic. So we are referring them to you. And so that information is really starting to change a lot in this terrain, which is great.
Yeah, you talk about the myotoxins and Lyme disease and whatnot. I see it on social media a lot, especially I'm in a mast cell activation syndrome group,
Mhm.
and so many people talk about mold and whatnot. And I can tell you there was one particular week where I was having a whole lot of flare-ups and I couldn't figure out what was happening. And then I went over to a corner and saw that we had a wooden cutting board that had mold all on the bottom that I guess that part didn't dry and it got moldy. And I went, holy cow, this is probably what's been causing my flare ups all week because I spend a lot of time in the kitchen. And I took it straight to the garage. I was like, out you go. And, I see that mold is a big issue for people, but there's so much misinformation about the testing and how do you know? And same with the parasites. I see all these Facebook ads for parasitic cleanses and things like that. And then you see ones for, these are scams. And it's like, so how do people start to go about properly testing for these types of things, the myotoxins and whatnot?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are so many tests available. There are so many things, and it is very overwhelming. And I will say this, if you start by testing your home because you think it's suspicious of something, there's multiple tests. There is no perfect test. So some tests are going to pick up one thing that another test may not. So we always talk to people like before you're testing your house, if you're suspicious of mold, let's have a conversation about what the plan is with that house. Do you rent the house or do you own the house? Because that's a big difference. Are you planning on staying in this house and remediating it if it has mold, or are you planning on leaving this house if it has mold? So to know if you have mold, that's usually the first place we want to start is, are you sensitive? Do you have a mycotoxin illness? There's a urine test we can do from a company called Real Time Labs. There's a blood test we can do from My Myco Labs. There are a couple of other blood tests that we can do from the conventional lab that gives us an indication that there might be mold there, but it's not a direct, they're more of what we call an indirect test. They give us a suspicion that we're dealing with a mycotoxin illness, but it doesn't tell us what mycotoxin. So there's lots of different tests that we can do. And then once we know what mycotoxins are there, it's much easier for us to say, let's start looking at your environment. Is it your house? Is it a work environment? That's a whole big different story if it's a work environment versus your home. And then there's air sampling you can do. There's dust sampling you can do. There's culture tests that you can do. And again, all of them can be helpful, but all of them can be a little confusing as well.
You're right. Well, it sounds kind of hopeful though, in that there are so many tests, because that means we don't have to stop at I don't know.
Correct. And just because you don't see mold doesn't mean mold is not there. Mycotoxins are invisible. Sometimes we smell them, sometimes we don't. You rarely ever see a mycotoxin. What you see is the mold. It's the mycotoxins that get released from the mold that's there that is making you sick. It's not the mold itself, because if that was the case, we'd get sick every time we ate a mushroom or we'd take an antibiotic, because those are mold cultured things. So it's not that part that's making us sick. It's the toxins that get released. And that's the confusing part for a lot of people. And making sure we can line up the toxins with the mold that's there is really important.
That's a great differentiator, because I think that's something people don't realize, that it's not necessarily the mold itself. It's those myotoxins that get released. That's interesting. And I appreciate that you said that it's not always visible, because I've always had a really sensitive nose and I can smell it a lot of times. And I'll go somewhere and oh, God, I can smell mold. And my husband's like, what are you talking about? I smell nothing. I'm like, I smell it. And, so it's fascinating that, you're right. Some people can't smell it either. And so it could be in your walls. I have had friends where they had no clue it was behind their walls until they brought somebody in. And actually, there's a YouTube show on it too, because she ended up going to the news because she had to fight her builder about it. And you say too, in the work environment, that's got to be pretty scary for some people.
Yeah.
I know I went to a meeting recently and they had one of those big candles going, and I was like, oh gosh, okay, I can do this.
Yes, right.
I was like, all right.
Well, and we used to call this sick building syndrome back in the day. And almost all of the schools, unfortunately, have some form of toxin in it, and mold, especially if they're older school buildings, they're going to have mold in there, which makes it hard for the teachers. We wonder why kids can't learn because they're being exposed to mold and toxins. We forget that mold can grow behind the siding in a house. And oftentimes there's a misconception that my house is brand new, there's no way it can be moldy. Well, that's not necessarily true. Look at how they use the building materials. They get wet, they stay out in the elements, they're not completely dried out before they put drywall up on top of it or they put the siding up on top of it. There are known builders in different parts of the country that a lot of their homes are moldy because of the poor building techniques that they use. Sometimes we're questioning these days, are our buildings too tight? They don't breathe enough. And does that cause mold for us? So just because you have a new house doesn't mean that it can't be moldy. I heard a story yesterday from somebody. She lived in her house for 9 months. She was super sick. And it was her brand new house that was built, and it was only 9 months old. That was full of mold everywhere and made her very sick.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. And, especially environments like I'm here in Houston where we're always humid. And I mean, it's
Yes.
been raining for over a week now for mostly every day. And my backyard is a soupy mess.
Yes.
No telling how much mold gets created from all of that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I bet there's going to be a lot of people listening going, oh, I need to check my house.
Exactly. And we don't realize, we think mold, most of us have been taught like mold isn't a problem. Let's just go wipe it up with some bleach. It'll be fine. Don't ever do that. Bleach creates more mycotoxins. So don't use bleach to clean it up. There are some different natural solutions that you can use, like Decon 30 is really great. There's some essential oils called Microbalance, which is a nice formula that can be used that don't produce more mycotoxins. But one of the concerns that we have, not only just with neurological diseases, is the cancer risk that comes with people who've been exposed to mold. There are very specific forms of mold that are known to cause liver cancer, kidney cancer, different things like this. There's known molds that cause neurological conditions. So it decreases your body's immune system ability to fight off things. And the longer you're exposed to that, the higher the risk is that you're going to develop some form of cancer or neurological disease. And so it is really important to take care of this and not just push it off. It's expensive, it's hard, but you want to take care of it.
Wow, that makes me so frustrated to hear just how hard it can be sometimes to identify. And and the reason why I'm saying it makes me mad is because I think about all the people who might not have the financial resources
Yeah.
to do all these tests or to fix something, even if they do find it and see it. I see reports all the time here in Houston about some of our inner city. The housing here is just awful. And it makes me so frustrated for these people that they don't have options to, make themselves better.
Yeah.
Um, wow. So that kind of makes me think too. I'm hearing the rain right now behind me, about the perfect storm you talk about in your new book. And I guess, there are several aspects to the perfect storm, but you talk about the most common hidden roots. So I guess, can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So the perfect storm is usually what happens to people when they've had enough. So if you think of your body as a rain barrel, right? You're adding up each toxin and it's maybe putting an inch into that barrel and you can tolerate it. You could even tolerate it maybe when it's half full. But once it gets to 3/4 full of toxins and pesticide exposure and poor diet and too much stress and not enough sleep and menopause and maybe you're getting exposed to different viruses that have been in the environment recently. They're triggering other viruses. And now you've got a bacterial infection on top of it. And now you're getting a mold exposure or a heavy metal exposure. All of those things will eventually allow the body to say, enough is enough. I'm done. And so when we talk about the perfect storm, that's somewhat what we're talking about. And you've been limping along, getting along. Life maybe hasn't been great. You haven't been feeling perfect, but you've been getting along. And then all of a sudden something comes in. You get a virus, you get a bronchitis, you have a death in the family. And all of a sudden, that's the last straw. Your body says, I can't do it. And it just takes you down. And we have to go back and start looking at that. That is the perfect storm. It's been multiple things that have happened and layered on top of each other to create this final straw that your body has said, you haven't listened to me with all the little signals. Now I'm giving you a big one and you're going to have to listen. I'm going to force you to listen and take care of yourself now.
That's exactly what happened with me last year. And I guess, 2023, that last quarter. And all of a sudden I had hives all over. And I, obviously had not that it felt like it came out of nowhere, but I guess it didn't. I guess the hives came out of nowhere. But I had been dealing with what I thought was weight gain for a couple years before that. And even though I'm a former professional, physique competitor,
Mhm.
or not professional, I was a physique competitor. I knew how to manipulate my body, how to exercise, how to eat, quote unquote, correctly. And even at the time, I was eating spinach and, all the healthy, quote unquote, things. And turns out I have a histamine intolerance. So once I removed all of the histamine inhibitors or histamine, high in histamine foods, I dropped 20 pounds without even changing anything else. And it was just all that inflammation that I had. And it's like I'm 47 and I have abs again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. That all it was the stupid histamines.
Yes.
And I'm sure I have other, mold and things like that, but that was a huge factor for me. And I saw in your book that you talk about, one of the options is the carnivore diet so that you can
Yeah.
start to just let's eliminate some things. And that was what I did. I went to mostly carnivore diet and just started and I went cold turkey because it was like you said, I'm done. Like I'm done.
Yeah.
And I went straight to just plain chicken. Was it boring? Was it sad? Yes. Did I find myself crying once when my husband brought pizza and I knew I couldn't eat it? Yes. But, now I'm about a year into all of this and I still eat mostly carnivore now because that's just the way I feel better. But, can I have some mustard occasionally? Things like that. Yes. Do I I do have quinoa occasionally because I do like quinoa. So I give myself those, treats. But being able to eliminate and go, oh, nope, that's definitely a trigger, was really good. Now, I did go get my allergy testing done to see that I have IgE mediated. Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Allergies. So I obviously had to eliminate the 5 things that I'm actually allergic to. And, those can be sneaky too, because sesame caused me to go into anaphylactic shock last year on a Zoom call. So it was mortifying because I was in a networking group. So they all just were sitting there staring at me as I had to epi myself and
Yeah.
fall on the floor. But no, so I don't even, you were talking about the perfect storm. And I love that you examine all the factors, including the stress, including the, I saw in your book, you even talk about the spiritual aspects of it. And it makes me kind of think of, I study quantum physics a lot. I love studying, universal laws and all of that. And it makes me think of kind of quantum entanglement with, we have to be in right relationship with everything.
Yes.
Our environment, our bodies, with our stress, everything. And so tell me a little bit about how you started kind of waking up to that side of things.
Yeah. So I started learning spirituality and spiritual practices very young in my life, about 28 or 29. When I first got sick, I started learning about some of this. I loved quantum physics as well. And we had quantum physics in our naturopathic training. So that was our first introduction to some of that, which was really nice. And I studied shamanic healing for a while, which is not what everybody thinks it is. It is not the devil. It is not this negative thing. It is more of a Native American practice where we believe that God created everything for us, and the plants, the trees, and everything is a living entity. And all of those living entities have energy to them, and we all vibrate at that energy. So my first experience of getting sick kind of brought me into some of that knowledge base. Interestingly enough, when I was diagnosed with MS and I looked back, I said, I haven't been practicing my spiritual practices for a long time. I was stuck in my entrepreneurial world. I was busy more in that masculine energy, burning the candle at both ends, and just had my head down and just building and driving and taking care of clients, and really wasn't taking care of myself. And so I took a step back and said, I realized that this is not just a physical issue for me, but there's something spiritual inside of me that needs healing as well, because I know I'm not just one being. And my personal belief is that I am a spiritual entity having a physical experience. That is how I look at myself. And so I knew that something spiritually was amiss. I was missing something. I had lost something. I had got disconnected from it. And I started getting back into my spiritual practices again, and started doing a little bit of meditation, started doing some work with some different healers that I work with, some galactic healers. I've worked with some spiritual healers, took a dive back into that world and said, let's find that spiritual connection. Is this an issue for me in this life? Or is there a past life connection as well that I'm dealing with? I have had past life issues before, past life entities. And so we were able to find some different connections from past lives that I had that I didn't release back then. And I kept bringing them forward in each life. So if people believe in the past life part, this makes sense to you. If you think that we've never had past lives, that's okay. But for me, I felt like I knew this was something I had been carrying forward as well. And once we started untangling that and breaking those ties of my past life experiences, I started feeling that much better and that much better. And things just started to improve. And certainly I did all the physical aspects as well. And I made a reconnection back to my higher source, which for me is God and Christ. And I got back into connection with that, started putting that first instead of last, or even worse than last because I was too busy. And that made a big difference for me. I'm not as fearful about where this disorder is coming. I talk about my MS being a misdiagnosis, and I do think it was. There was a lot of reasons that caused my symptoms. And lucky enough for me, I did see a neurologist not that long ago that did confirm to me that she said, I really don't think you have MS. I really think you have something else. I think you have a post-viral neuropathy. I think you have Lyme, you had mold, all of these other toxins that came in that just created this thing to look like MS. And they can all damage the brain and create white matter disease just like MS does. And there are moments where I sit back and I think, is she wrong? There's always that part of you like, is she wrong? And if she is, she is. But I'm okay with everything because at least I have tools now to help me fix any of the symptoms that come up that make me question where this is coming from and what this is happening to me for or why. And I've always been blessed. God's always put people in front of me to teach me a lesson. When he's wanted me to learn something, he'll put 3 or 4 clients in front of me at the same time within 24 to 48 hours. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm supposed to learn something here. And that's how I look at my illness. Like he put this in front of me to learn and to take everything that I've learned over the years and educate somebody else on it.
Yes, I love it. And I feel the same way. I feel like God delivers the exact people I need at the exact time. And even not necessarily just for me, but for me to also expand the message, because
Yes. Mhm.
like I see in that group that I'm in, these women are hurting. They don't feel seen. They keep being told they're crazy.
Yeah.
Some of them, they're even losing their relationships, their marriages, their jobs because people keep thinking they're just crazy.
Yeah.
And it just makes me hurt for them. Thankfully, I work for myself, so I can control my environment. I can control my schedule, my pretty much everything. And thankfully, my husband I've been dragging him along the quantum physics thing for years now. So he doesn't think I'm crazy and he starts to see all these things. So I'm blessed that I have a spouse who is in alignment with me on that. And, you're so right too, because of the spiritual aspect. I looked at it again myself, just like you did. And I was like, I haven't really been doing it like I know I should be and want to and have.
Mhm.
So it's like once I dove back into that, and I was explaining this to somebody the other day, is my life less stressful right now? Absolutely not than it was a year ago. But I am so much calmer about how I handle stress and how I look at things that happen around me. And you mentioned that everything happens for you for I'm very much in alignment with that. And it's like, okay, so this is happening. What am I supposed to learn from this?
Yeah.
Uh, so I love that you say that.
Tired of overpriced energy drinks full of junk? Same. That's why I use Babello, a self-carbonating hydration packet that gives you clean energy, electrolytes, and vitamins without the crash. Just add water, shake, and sip. It's way more affordable than typical energy drinks and way better for you. Use code ChrissyBernal15 at checkout to get 15% off at drinkbabello.com. Hydration just got an upgrade.
Earlier, you mentioned blood tests being normal. And I see that all the time. I've been told that, oh, well, you're within normal range. Okay, but I don't feel good still. Why? Why? So I know that's something women get told a lot. What do you tell your patients whenever they're told that by others?
Yeah. So, we have this traditional normal range, which is meant to catch 90% of the people. But then we have this range outside of that, that 10 and maybe even 20%, I would argue, is not the quote unquote norm. And so those people are the people that tend to get missed and they get dropped off and they don't fit the traditional picture. In the functional medicine world, we have more of a functional medicine range to our labs. It's what we call optimal. So some things we want to see in the upper 1/3, some things we want to see in the lower 1/3. It depends on what lab we're looking at. And if you're not in that functional range and you're symptomatic, then that's an area that we want to deal with. And thyroid is a really great example of this. Women are always told, oh, your thyroid's fine. Well, they're only measuring one hormone, and that's your TSH, which really tells us nothing other than how the brain can communicate with the thyroid. That's all it's telling us. But I've seen people be told that it's normal if it's under 1, and I've seen them told it's normal if it's 10. Well, the normal range only is supposed to go to about 4.5. And so if somebody's telling you your normal is 10, that's not normal. But I have people all the time that are at 3, 3.5, or 4, and they're very symptomatic of their thyroid function. And then we dig deeper. We always look at the full thyroid panel, and we can see they don't have enough thyroid in their bloodstream. There's not enough on a cellular level. Maybe there's some start of some thyroid antibodies happening, which are causing their thyroid hormones to go up and down quite often, which is part of what's triggering their symptoms. And so if you work with somebody who has a functional background, they will look at those labs very differently than your traditional doctor will look at them.
That's interesting because I hear women all the time. But my doctor says I'm normal, and it's like no, that's really interesting. So on your energy work, how do you introduce that to patients whenever? Because that could be considered maybe woo by some people. Once you start to study the sciences behind it, it's not woo at all. But how do you introduce it to your patients?
I think there's a couple of key ways. So one of the ways we introduce it into our office is using biofeedback. Biofeedback is nothing more than energy medicine. We're delivering a sound energy, which every living thing vibrates at a particular sound frequency. So we deliver that sound frequency to either provide a treatment option for somebody or for us to look at and see, are there certain bugs in the body that are vibrating at this energy? And every time we deliver that sound energy, we see a heart rate change. We call it heart rate variability. And that gives us a clue into what we're dealing with. So that's one way we can start with energy medicine. I love the realm of cranial sacral work. That is a great energy medicine. Reiki, for those people who understand that, that is another energy-based medicine. And we have a lot of them. Most of the time, we're wearing them these days. We're wearing a wearable, an Aura ring, a Nikki. There are all kinds of different devices that deliver different frequency energy to us to calm us down. A lot of the vagus nerve stimulators,
Yes.
that's energy medicine these days. And so we have these devices around us that we're using all the time, but we don't understand what they actually are. That is quantum physics. When we start talking about some of the more spiritual aspects of things, that can be a little different conversation for people. But spirituality has been with us for thousands of years. It's what we've learned about Jesus Christ. It's what we've learned about God. That's spiritual energy. That's spiritual practices. And so if you don't already have that connection, we talk about who is your higher power? Is it the universe? Is it God? One of my gals, her higher power is her high heel shoes. Okay. I mean, give your higher power to whatever you want, but I'm not going to give my higher power to that. But it's a friend of mine. It's not a client, but that's her higher power. And so we have to believe in something bigger than us in the universe. If we don't believe that there's something bigger than us out there, we are going to have a hard time getting through all the chaos in the world these days. And so we talk about that. Like, how are you going to ground? Grounding is really important these days. Everybody knows about grounding. You just need to go outside, put your bare feet on the ground and spend some time out there. That is grounding. You can use a grounding mat. I have a grounding blanket on right now because I'm trying to ground myself from the EMF that I'm being exposed to while I record this. We have blankets and pillowcases and all kinds of things that provide energy to us. And it really becomes, what are you comfortable with? Where do you resonate? What are you attracted to?
I need to get that blanket. I stand on my mat every day, especially when we have the rainy days that, just not going to go out. I
Right.
have my garden that I go and do things at. So that way I'm in the dirt there. We sleep with a grounding strip as well. And so, yeah, I've seen a big difference from the grounding aspect. And I'm trying to incorporate the morning and evening sunlight as well. It's a little bit challenging on days like this, but yeah. So I love that you're getting people to at least think, and you're not trying to persuade them on your belief, but just getting them to think and determine what they believe on their own. So yeah, I don't think I could get down with the high heels either, but
Yeah,
to each their own.
that's right. That's right.
That's funny. So in your book, you also talk about being an empowered patient. And I think a lot of women don't feel very empowered when they go see most of their physicians.
Yeah.
And we feel like cattle a lot of times, just being shoved to the next one. What do you mean by empowered patient, and how can someone do that?
I love this question because I think this is one of the most important questions that we could talk about. Unfortunately, I see many people who have seen 30, 50, even 100 doctors before they get to see someone like myself. And they've been treated much like you, dismissed, told they're crazy, taken antidepressant. We have to remember where some of that comes from. It's not ill will on the part of the practitioner, but they are taught that if a person comes in and complains of more than 2 symptoms, it must be all in their head. It's somatic. It doesn't have a physical base. And that's unfortunate because that couldn't be further from the truth, right? And I think this is where, as a patient, you need to take your health into your own hands. You do not need to apologize to anyone for your beliefs, for what you feel is going on in your body. You don't need to apologize for wanting to see someone else and wanting to partner with a doctor that is going to work with you. If you get into a situation where the doctor's being dismissive or argumentative, or they're accusing you of being drug seeking or crazy or whatever, you have every right to just excuse yourself and get up and leave that visit. You don't need to be berated that way. To me, that's abusive to have that kind of conversation. And I'm still amazed after 25 years that people will come in and tell me stories, and I'll be like, they said what to you? I mean, you think by now I would have heard it all, but I haven't. I'm still always surprised by what a doctor will say to a client. So become well-versed, become knowledgeable. And I know that's hard for people because they'll say, like, I don't have that knowledge base. No, but you have the luxury of having Google these days. Or AI, and you can type things into the system and start asking questions like, where will this be coming from? I'm seeing this expert, maybe it's a neurologist or a cardiologist, and these are my symptoms. What kind of questions should I be asking of them? And don't be afraid to ask those questions. You are paying that person for their time and their expertise. It's not a gift that you're there. It's a gift to them that you are there. So remember that part of it. It's okay to challenge the rhetoric. It's okay to say, but I've done A, B, C, and D, and this hasn't worked. How are you going to do something different for me? What can you provide for me that's different? You need to be an educated patient, especially when your symptoms are complex, especially when your diagnosis is complex, because reality is, at the end of the day, nobody knows your body better than you. You are an expert in what's going on in your body, not the person sitting across the desk from you. So you need to educate them on what you're experiencing, and they need to provide their education and knowledge to you to help you create a plan. And so really empowering yourself, taking really good notes about what happens when you do certain things, keeping a journal. Those things should not be they shouldn't be frightening, I guess, to the practitioner. They shouldn't be afraid that you've done that, although some will be. But that should be a clue. If you came into my office with that, I'd be like, oh my God, this is a gold mine. Thank you. You've already outlined everything for me so I can see the patterns of what I know is going on, even though you may not know what the patterns mean. I do. And that's just made my job 10 times easier to help you. So don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to fire somebody that's not working for you.
Yeah, I mean, I had that experience recently. I record a lot of things. If I feel my heart doing something weird, okay, I'll write that down. What was I doing? What did I eat? Blah, blah, blah. And I recently went into a doctor, and he literally told me he didn't care about all of my notes and all of my data, and what my watch said, and what, anything. He didn't care. He flat up told me that. And I was like, okay, interesting, because I'm all about collecting data for my day job. Why would I not collect data for my body?
Right. That's why we have these tools, because without them, we don't know what's happening at any given time. And when you go into the doctor and they take your blood pressure and your heart rate and your weight, that is just a snapshot in a 24-hour period of what's happening to you. You could go home that night and have put on 7 pounds, and that does not get reflected at the doctor's office, but you feel it and you see it on your scale. And they're going to dismiss it and say, well, your scale isn't calibrated. To me, that tells me you ate something or did something or were exposed to something that your body is telling you a message that it doesn't like. Now we need to figure out what is that, because we don't want to keep doing that.
100%. And, I've even been told in the past, I had a doctor, this was, I don't remember how many years ago, but she told me, oh, just watch my calories. Just watch my
I hear
calories.
that all the time.
And I was like, not to be disrespectful, but I'm pretty well versed in nutrition and I know what I'm doing. And I was like, that's not exactly how it works. I think we need to dive deeper. And she didn't want to. So I went to a different doctor.
Yep. Calories in, calories out, or they'll say you're lying about what calories you're actually consuming.
Yeah.
If I hear that one more time from a patient, I've literally seen patients with the most pristine diet and they're still gaining weight. I have clients that eat 500 calories a day. They're still gaining weight. I've seen them eat 2,000 calories a day and gain weight or lose weight. It has nothing to do with calories in or calories out. I think we've debunked that plenty times now. It's about what food you're putting in, how is the chemistry, what is your body reacting to? Do you have that IgE or what we call an IgG reaction? If you have an IgG reaction to foods, I eat something today, well, my body could react for up to 14 days afterwards. And I may not know that. If I eat it and I get a headache or I get a stomachache or diarrhea, okay, I know that's probably not good for me. I shouldn't have the ice cream. It just gave me diarrhea, right? But if I eat it today and 3, 4, 5 days later, I'm swollen, I'm inflamed, I've got headaches, I'm tired, I have brain fog, I'm not going back and thinking it's from that ice cream that I ate 4 days ago. Yeah. So that's where keeping that journal and seeing those patterns of things really comes in handy, because you can start to figure out very quickly what things are causing problems for you.
That's an interesting thing to bring up because, if you're keeping track and you see 3 times in a row that 4 days after you eat something, you feel like crap. Oh, wow. I never even thought about it being so delayed, but wow.
Very delayed for people. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. That's pretty fascinating. So I know we're almost at the end of our time. I have 2 questions to wrap it up. What is one belief about health that you wish every woman over 35 would know or hear or understand?
Hormones are key.
Okay.
We've been sold a bill of goods that's wrong, that hormones are our enemy and that we should just let them go away and it's fine because God forbid you could get cancer from taking hormones. That is the farthest thing from the truth. We need hormones. We need them to be optimized. We will function much better. There's no reason for us to function 50 years of our life without hormones when we had 50 years before that with hormones and had a wonderful life. Nobody wants to be that frumpy, dumpy, old grandma looking person and feeling bad. So that is a key for me, is that you need to look at hormones very differently. And we do need to really take food seriously. We need to eat clean food. That is at the root of everything.
I 100% agree. And in my studies on even mitochondria and what the mitochondria likes, and it's gotten me even more excited to go to our local farmers market, get some local foods that I know, or I've even, there's a guy who makes bacon here that I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to eat because he does it. So it'll be a treat for me. I won't go crazy with it, but I'm eager to try it. And then the last question is, I know that you have the book coming out, but you have so many other things where you can actually help people who are not in your area. So how can the listeners and our viewers reach out to you and maybe get some help from you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on social media. Serenity Healthcare Center is our website. That's all our social media channels too, as well. We put a lot of information out. Our website is very robust. We have over 1,500 pages on our website. We put a lot of educational materials on there. We have a lot of free ebooks that can be downloaded to help you understand these concepts more. If you want to work with us remotely, we have an option for you to do that. We can do telehealth in many places. So there are all kinds of ways. I'm always training other practitioners what we do. So we now have people throughout the whole country that we've worked with. If you're looking for somebody in a particular area, you can reach out to my team. We can let you know who we've worked with, who we've trained in your area that can help you as well. So there are lots of ways that you can get help from the knowledge that we have.
That's amazing. Yeah, because I know so many who need somebody like you who will care and listen and explore and be curious. And then tell us about your upcoming book and when it comes out.
Yeah, awesome. So my book is called Seen at Last. It's dedicated to those clients who have never been seen or heard. And it's a story about neurological disease, what we can do, how all of these things impact us. So if you've dealt with mold or Lyme or hormone issues, all of that is in the book. Mitochondrial issues are in the book. We have lots of protocols in the book that you can use and you can start to implement yourself. We talk a lot about the testing and a deeper dive of what you and I've talked about before too. So you can take that to your practitioner, share that with them, teach them if you need to. But I'm really excited about the book. It should be available sometime around August. So it's a labor of love and I'm super excited about it.
Well, I got to see a sneak peek of it, and I think everyone should read it. I'm excited to share about it in my groups that I'm in because it's just going to help so many people. And of course, buy copies and give them away. So, well, thank you so much again for joining me. And I hope the listeners will reach out to you and find their own answers. And I will see the listeners next week on Finally Seen.